Someone close to you feels uneasy about your success. They don't show it directly. They smile when you walk in. They clap when you win. They say the right words at the right time. But every time something good happens to you, they ask one small question. Quiet, casual, almost harmless. That leaves you second-guessing yourself. Not angry, not offended, just subtly smaller than you were a moment ago. That reaction isn't curiosity, it's jealousy hiding behind a calm face. In this video, you'll learn how to recognize it early, before it chips away at your confidence, your momentum, and your sense of self. Stay with me. By the end, these questions won't confuse you anymore. They'll expose themselves. Jealousy doesn't always look aggressive. It rarely comes as open hostility. Sometimes it shows up as concern. Sometimes as humor. Sometimes as innocent questions that feel normal in the moment until you replay them later and realize something was off. This isn't about becoming suspicious. It's about becoming aware. Question 1. So how did you even manage to do that? On the surface, it sounds harmless, almost supportive, like curiosity, like interest. But tone matters more than words. A genuine person asks because they want to learn. A threatened one asks because they don't believe the result belongs to you. Notice what's missing. Not "I'm proud of you." Not "That's impressive." Not "Show me how you did it." Just disbelief wrapped in a question. There's often a pause before it. A slight tilt of the head. A half smile that doesn't reach the eyes. As if they're trying to solve a puzzle that shouldn't exist. Because in their mind, you weren't supposed to win. This question isn't about the process, it's about invalidation. They're quietly scanning the story, looking for luck. Shortcuts, connections, anything that turns your growth into coincidence. When you talk about discipline, they go quiet. When you mention struggle, they suddenly seem engaged. And the moment luck enters the conversation, you can almost feel the tension leave their body. Because luck means it wasn't really you. It's like watching someone inspect a finished building, hoping to find a crack in the foundation so they don't have to admit it was built brick by brick. Earned success is uncomfortable to people who chose familiarity over growth. So when someone keeps asking, "How did you even manage that?" Every time you level up, understand this. They're not asking to be inspired. They're asking to feel safe again. Safe in the belief that you're still playing on the same level. If this feels familiar, pause for a second. You're not imagining it. You're noticing a pattern. Drop clarity in the comments and keep watching. This gets deeper. Question 2. Don't you think you're doing too much? At first, it sounds like care, like concern, like someone checking on your balance. But pay attention to when this question appears. Not when you're stuck. Not when you're drifting. Not when you're playing small. It only shows up when your habits change. When your mornings look different. When your calendar tightens. When your goals start demanding sacrifice instead of comfort. That's when you're suddenly doing too much. No one asks this when you're wasting potential. No one worries about burnout when you're settling for average. They only get concerned when your movement disrupts the version of you they felt comfortable around. Because the old you was predictable, accessible, safe. The old you didn't challenge their pace, didn't reflect their hesitation back at them, didn't force comparison. This question isn't really about your well-being. It's about their discomfort. It's like someone watching you climb and asking you to slow down. Not because the climb is dangerous, but because they decided to stay on the ground. A genuine supporter might suggest rest. They might remind you to breathe. They might encourage recovery. But they will never ask you to shrink. They will never tell you to dim your drive. They will never frame your growth as excess. When someone says you're doing too much, what they often mean is, you're moving faster than I am, and it's exposing everything I've been avoiding. And that exposure is not your responsibility. Question 3. Why are you acting different? This one cuts deeper than the others. Because it doesn't question your success. It questions who you are becoming. It makes growth feel like betrayal, like you owe an apology for evolving. But here's the truth most people miss. They're not asking why you changed. They're asking why you no longer fit the version of you that made them comfortable. The version that was always available, always explaining, always accommodating, always shrinking to keep the peace. When you stop oversharing, they call it distance. When you stop justifying yourself, they call it ego. When you set boundaries, they call it cold. But you're not acting different. You're acting aligned. It's like updating an operating system. The old apps stop working. Not because something broke, but because something advanced. You cannot upgrade your life and keep the same emotional contracts. Growth always changes the terms. Someone loses access. Someone feels exposed. Someone realizes they benefited from the old version of you. And instead of rising with you, they ask you, quietly, subtly, to stay small. Not because you're wrong, but because your evolution forces them to face their stagnation. Bonus question. Sometimes they don't question you directly. They warn you. Be careful. Not everyone wants to see you win. Some people might be jealous. It sounds protective, almost thoughtful, like they're on your side. But pay attention. People who feel secure don't obsess over threats. People who feel aligned don't scan rooms for enemies. People who are at peace don't constantly talk about jealousy. That warning isn't awareness, it's projection. People who envy often warn others about envy. People who feel behind stay hyper-focused on comparison. People who feel exposed look for danger everywhere, so they don't have to look inward. Jealousy doesn't usually announce itself. It doesn't scream. It doesn't explode. It repeats. The same concerns, the same doubts, the same "be careful" wrapped in concern every time you move forward. It's like someone tapping the brakes while pretending they're protecting the engine. They don't want you to crash. They want you to slow down. Because your momentum forces them to feel their lack of it. And here's the quiet truth most people miss. Jealous people don't want your destruction. They want your hesitation. They want you uncertain enough to pause, polite enough to explain, empathetic enough to shrink. That way nothing has to change, especially not them. So what do you do with this awareness? You don't confront. You don't explain. You don't correct. You adjust distance. You watch who celebrates without hesitation, who claps without comparison, who grows instead of resists. And you notice who only felt comfortable when you were smaller, quieter, easier to predict. This isn't about cutting people off. It's about alignment. Because alignment doesn't argue, it reveals itself. The people meant to stay don't need reassurance. They don't ask you to slow down. They don't ask you to stay familiar. They meet you where you are. Everyone else fades. Not loudly, not dramatically, just naturally. Because growth doesn't push people away. It removes roles that no longer exist. Outgrowing people isn't betrayal. It's evidence. Evidence that something inside you woke up. That a part of you refused to stay dormant, refused to shrink, refused to keep playing a role that no longer fit. Growth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask for permission. It simply moves forward, and not everyone is built to follow. Some connections end not because of conflict, but because alignment quietly disappears. No arguments, no villains. Just distance created by elevation. When you evolve, you don't lose people, you lose compatibility. And that's not cruelty, that's honesty. So protect your momentum, not aggressively, not defensively, just deliberately. Protect your silence. Because not every thought needs to be shared, and not every step needs an audience. Move without explaining, grow without announcing. Let results speak in rooms you no longer enter. And remember this, the real test of connection isn't who stays when you're broken. Pain attracts attention easily. The real test is who stays clean, grounded, and genuine when you're becoming unstoppable. Because strength changes the room. And not everyone is comfortable breathing at higher altitudes. If this brought you clarity, stay subscribed. This channel isn't about noise. It isn't about drama. It isn't about proving anything. It's about seeing clearly, choosing yourself quietly, and moving forward without asking permission.